Hey guys, I'm Jessica Mulder, and this is the Hard Way Pod, the podcast about learning from your mistakes the hard way. Today, I've got a great guest. I've got Ardin. He's a writer and he's a comedian. Comes to my show all the time. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So, we already have a topic that we know we're going to talk about, but before we get into that, I just wanted to talk about a hard way lesson that I learned yesterday and today, and it goes a little bit to what we were talking about in the car with work and applying to jobs and things. So I've been applying to jobs, and I've been a designer, and I've been for almost 10 years, and I've been a creative director for about 3. And so, of course, when I'm applying to jobs, I'm like, oh, I need a portfolio, you know? And so one of the things that I failed to do throughout this whole time was really take the time to myself start curating it in a way that I'd want to present. So when I was applying for jobs, I was like, okay, cool. I'll just take everything that I've done and I'll dump it onto this website real fast and hastily, like I like to act, because I just want to get things done. And then, sure, people will start hiring me. I have a good resume. It's great, whatever. And then, like, nobody's getting back to me. And I'm like, okay, times are tough. These are high-paying jobs for, like, fancy companies, you know. Maybe it's just, like, there's people that are better than me, which I'm sure there are plenty of. But in this scenario, I was just like, you know, my stuff is good. It's there. You know, it's up there. It's all there, you know. But I didn't really put a lot of thought into maybe this is too much information. And that's just like another theory I have. But I found out that I needed to rethink this the hard way, because one of the things that I do with my company and with clients is I use this website for like sourcing designers, right? And they work really well with logos, because whenever we need to make a logo or something, it's great if I can design it or if I work with my marketing director to design it. But what's better is if you like put out the creative brief to like 30 designers and then get a bunch of different designs with their perspectives, and then we'd pay them for their whoever wins the contest. It's essentially like a design contest website for freelancers. And so I use this all the time. I've been using it for years. I'm the creative director to the designers when I'm working with them, making edits and things. And half the time, like, the client doesn't pick a logo outright. I have to fix it and refine it, but I still buy the initial concept from them, right? So as I'm looking for work and struggling with money, as always am, I'm like, oh, I should sign up for this site as a designer and try and get into some of these contests, win $250 here or there if I win the logo contest. Thinking like, given, I'm just going to do it, you know? And so I sign up for it. I put in my experience. It's like 5+ years. And then I give them my portfolio or whatever, and they're supposed to review and approve it, right? I get an email the next morning that says, unfortunately, we're going to have to decline your application. I got rejected from the site that I use all the time where I'm art directing designers, and because they said that my portfolio wasn't up to their quality standards. So I was, first of all, really embarrassed. Second of all, just collapsing in on myself. I was like, oh my God, am I just terrible? Am I really bad? And I think I'm good, and nobody ever told me. Holy shit, how did I get rejected? Like, I didn't even think that was going to be a possibility. Like, I thought they were just going to be like, or they were like, hey, can we see something else? They were just like, no. And they wouldn't let me appeal it. But I, you know, responded back to them, and I was like, yo, like, you know, because the way they talked to me was like, you know, we need higher level designers. I'm like, oh my God, I've been drawing since I could hold a fucking pen. I've been designing things for 10 fucking years almost. Like, what do you mean I'm rejected from this site? You know, like, just felt so horrible and like a loser because of this. And I was like, wow, this is really shitty. And they just replied back and were like, well, it's just the quality of your designs didn't meet our standards. And in my head, I'm like, half of the time, the designs I get from some of these designers are really not good at all. So I'm like, that makes me feel even worse. Because I'm like, I don't even like what half of your people do. How the fuck can I not be good enough for it, you know? And so and they were like, they made it so I can't apply again for a year. So I wish I would have thought of it, because that's what it is. When you get rejected, you have to wait a year. And I'm like, if I would have like thought ahead, you know, once I looked into like, they sent me a link to like their standards or whatever. And I was like, okay, I kind of see what they want to see in a portfolio now, which I don't know. I shouldn't have hastily signed up like that without looking into that. But it didn't even occur to me that I wouldn't be good enough for it, you know?
Right.
Because I have so much like stuff that I've done. And And when I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, it's because you put the fucking kitchen sink into your damn portfolio. You didn't really explain anything. So like a lot of the work is like political stuff. Like people have to vote on it and they don't pick the best stuff. So even though that's like the project, that wasn't the design I would have necessarily went with, but that's what they voted for, you know? So it's like, I was like, I fucked myself by putting too much information in, not explaining like, you know, the process of it and saying like, here's this project, here's what I did, here's why. It's just like a bunch of pictures of shit together, and sure they all match, but it's like out of context. I can't explain my portfolio. It has to be good enough at first glance, and it certainly the fuck wasn't, you know? So I was like, okay, I get what I need to do now. And so I spent yesterday remaking a whole website, a different website, because I was like, this is already too complicated. There's like 4 pages. It's deep. There's a lot of shit. I'm going to put all this shit on one scrolling page, which normally I would have done, but I was too lazy to sign up for a different site. And I just did the GoDaddy thing, and that thing sucks, and it looks outdated as hell.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I made a whole new thing, and I was like, this looks much better, but it's still not good enough. So now I'm like, I've got in my head things that I'm going to create and that I'm just going to invent from scratch, which if I would have given any time into myself and my portfolio for real, I would have already done that. I would have spent time like curating stuff that I believe in and I think this is good enough. Cause like some of the things, even though I think will be good for applying for a job for my current company that I put in there, I don't even necessarily think that's the best work because of the political, bureaucracy process that goes into it. Yeah. They don't pick the best, cleanest design. They pick some weird shit that has to do with their city that like out of context, a person hiring me is not going to know what that is, you know? Right. So anyway, don't be hasty, guys. That shit was really terrible, and I'm still traumatized by being told that I suck at designing and art directing.
Well, it's not that you suck at the process. It's that you suck at presenting yourself in a way that's sellable.
Exactly.
All right. This is, marketing 101.
Exactly.
So my problem is that I know how to market anybody else. Mm-hmm. But if I hold up that mirror to myself, I am dog dirt. I am the worst.
That is exactly what happened. It's like that's what I do is I market and design for other people. But when I had to do it for myself, I was like, you don't even you're not doing this for yourself. Like I put no effort into marketing myself. I just showed what I did for other people, and it's like that's no good. Yeah, you need to or at least frame what you did for other people in a way that does market you, because it just made me look bad.
Oh, yeah.
It was embarrassing.
Well, so I'm also looking for work right now. And my thing is I'm trying to get more entry level into graphic design, video editing, stuff like that.
Right.
Because if you follow my Instagram at all, Ardin Comedy, Ardin Comedy. Yeah. Yes, I do know how to plug myself. It's all interesting, weird, out there stuff that I've created. But the thing is, it's a lot of stuff that can be co-opted by a brand, right? So my series Office Ducks, it's something that's almost Geico commercial-esque, where you're like, oh, I could see a major brand or even a minor brand adopting that, or a similar concept and making it their own.
Yeah.
But, it's my ability to say, oh, here's something I did in a positive way, where I'm not like, oh, here's some crap I made and just put on the internet.
Yeah.
I'm very self-deprecating about my own work because this is brand new to me.
Yeah.
It's the first time in my life I'm embracing the gifts that I've got in this arena and trying to sell myself as that.
Right.
Right. If you try and if you want Marketing Man 101 guy, I can bring him back in a second.
Yeah.
But to be like, creative artist type, I'm like, the label artist for me still doesn't feel
no, it doesn't feel like that for me either, even though I just recently changed my Instagram from comedian to artist, because I was like, well, maybe they think they're like, we don't want some bozo comedian here, so I was like, maybe they found my Instagram, so I changed it. That's
one of the things I was talking with what was his name, Sean Lynch, I think that's right, unless if I got that wrong, sorry, but I'm terrible with names, especially when I'm high. So I was talking with him, and he, like me, I got the grammar on that wrong. We both came from advertising before we went into comedy. Mm-hmm. And we're like, a lot of creatives or creative agencies now are looking for comedians, looking for people who have that voice. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten some freelance assignments based on, we like your Twitter, we like your Instagram jokes. Would you write some for JCPenney? Would you write some for XYZ? Well, Penny's not doing great, but it was great that I got that work, right? And so I was like, oh, this is something I can leverage.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, what's something I'm good at? Writing.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I went to school for. It was an English major. How can I turn that into something that's going to make me some money?
Exactly.
Hey, I can write 140 character or less joke, not a problem, and go with it. Sorry, just pausing for photos.
That's really great. But oh man, yeah, it's just so stressful though. Just like to be able to write a bio about yourself and like make it really be you. And I I even lazily pulled the bio that I had to write for my companies, like when we submit for things, and it's too professional and it's too also arrogant a little bit. It's like, because like I've won awards for the stuff that I've done.
Yep.
With this job, yet I wasn't good enough for some peon fucking freelance site.
See, but that's the thing. You got to be able to cut the negatives out because no one knows because they're not going to go looking for it.
Yeah.
They want to see the accomplishments. They want to see, hey, I got XYZ award for,
Right, which I didn't write at all in the old portfolio, by the way. Now it's like 3 pictures and there's a whole description with the award there. And I'm like, why did you not think you needed to include that? What an idiot.
But I can tell this to you, but then when I go do my own website, it's like, oh, what am I even doing here? You know?
And I hate the whole like Jessica Mulder, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I'm kind of like, hi. This is me. This is what's happening. Check it out.
I submitted a resume, and we'll see if it works, where I put in Ardin, parentheses, are like a pirate, didn't like dinner. And then because it's professional, I use my last name that I never use. But I was like, I did that jokingly.
Yeah.
And I hit submit on it. I was like, oh, wait a second. What did I just do?
No,
and I was like,
I think that's good.
I think it shows that I've got some personality.
Yeah, exactly. Which I now put into my entire new website that I created in 12 hours. My arm hurts.
Oh, poor dear.
So, all right. Tangents.
Okay.
But I think these are good because we both are struggling with this right now. But the main topic we want to get into here, which we both dealt with a lot, which we've talked about before, is, not being afraid to ask for help and really just like self-care and taking care of your mental health and things like that, because we both struggled with those sorts of things.
Struggle.
Continue
Present
to struggle.
Tense.
Yeah. So this is going to be like a deep episode, guys. This is a deep one. So I don't know if you want to go first or you want me to go first.
I think I'll go first.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's a more recent story. I've told a little bit on stage, but this is kind of the nitty-gritty of it.
Okay.
And it was when I got hospitalized back in September.
Okay.
Because I don't know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I also, when I recognize I need help, I refuse to ask for it.
Stubborn.
No, because I don't think I deserve it. All right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of negative self-loathing stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to get pretty heady. So it was the end of September. I had just moved back to LA. I'd been in town for maybe a month and a half. And that's a whole nother story why I left town. But I was back. All right. New living situation, just getting settled in. But I needed to find work desperately, like any work. But when I'm stressed out, my anxiety cranks up. When my anxiety cranks up, my depression cranks up. And then I am useless.
That's fair.
So I'm in this tailspin, and I can't even see it. And it's gotten so bad. I've lost a ton of weight. I'm down to 116 pounds.
Shit, that's my goal weight, dude.
Yeah. But for a guy who's 5'8" on a good day, that's not good.
Yeah,
right?
I know. That's I'm short.
Yeah. So I'm in a total tailspin, and all of a sudden I start. Now, this is something I've done throughout my life periodically. I'm working on it, but I started what I, jokingly refer to as fight clubbing myself.
Oh.
Where I start beating the ever-loving bejesus out of myself.
Wow.
Just where you can't see it, right?
So it's kind of like a cutting, but with bruises.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So chest, stomach, wherever I can hit myself. But it got so bad, and so out of control, that I started taking off my belt and just, passionately Christing myself. And a lot of movie references. So it's the only way I can keep this stuff light, because this is horrific stuff.
Yeah, mine's not going to be good either. So, yeah.
But we can talk about it with a smile because we understand, we lived through it, and we're coming back.
Yeah, and then that's the whole point too, is so people understand it's like, this isn't just you, you know, you're not alone. Like, a lot of people are going through this shit. So
I know plenty of people personally and professionally that all deal with this stuff.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I now have roommates. Right? Before, when I lived on my own, this is fine behavior. Neighbors can't hear me.
Right.
You know, it's totally fine. But now I've got roommates, and they're watching me bouncing off the walls, beating the crap out of myself.
Oh, man.
I've got
so you're doing it in front of them.
Well, it's like I'd go into the bathroom and do it, but you can hear it.
Yeah, you can hear it.
I mean, especially if I'm taking a belt to myself.
And also, like, if you're having a breakdown, you're not necessarily thinking logically.
No, you're they're watching me fall apart over making a sandwich.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, yeah.
So my roommate just didn't know what to do at some point. I had gone outside. I'm sitting on the porch, and all of a sudden I hear behind me, Mr. my last name that I don't use, could you stand up for us? Right? And I'm like, that's not good.
Yeah.
Nobody calls me by my last name, and this is an authority figure, I can tell. So I put my phone down, right, because I think I know what's coming. And I turn around to see a couple police officers, one of which with a beanbag shotgun. All right. And they want to have a talk with me.
Oh, God.
Because my roommate had called the cops because he didn't know what the hell to do.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, I've dealt with someone have a mental break before as well.
Yeah.
Not everybody's equipped to handle it.
Right. But it's also like, if you're physically hurting yourself, he can't stop you. What if it turns outward? There's all sorts of reasons why it's not his, getting help. Yeah.
So, but again, this is me refusing to ask for help, right? It led to this.
Yeah.
And so now the cops have me handcuffed, right? And they're searching my pockets, making sure I got nothing harmful on myself.
Yeah.
And then they're like, so, we got a report from a neighbor. It's always a neighbor. It's never your roommate ratting you out. But we got a report from a neighbor saying you were beating yourself up and blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, no, just having a bad day, a little bit of yelling. And
also just like taking away the heaviness of it in complete denial of how bad it is. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but it's what I call classic lifetime woman syndrome. All right. Where in a second, as soon as the cops show up, you can go from out of your mind crazy to, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
What? Me hurt myself? No, that's crazy talk.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No. How'd I get the... And then they start, like, examining me.
Right.
And he goes, with all due respect, may I, respectfully lift up your shirt? I was like, yeah, sure, do your thing, Because if I start refusing stuff, I know I'm going in a squad car.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead, right? And he goes, oh, how'd you get these bruises over here? And I go, oh, I fell the other night walking home from a party, classic.
Fell on your stomach?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I fell real bad, He's like, so the police officer kind of goes, all right. So he goes back to my roommate. He says he's fell. And he goes, well, check out the other bruises on his back, right? So he lifts up the back of my shirt. He goes, how'd you get these, right? Which are clearly welt marks from a belt, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, I fell again, totally. And my roommate has never witnessed white people lie before, right? Up close. He's Latino, and he's never seen real white people lying shit, right? Where it's like, we need to get out of something bad, right? And so I'm like, no, dude, it's a whole thing, just crazy. And they were about to let me, like, out of the handcuffs to let me go, but my roommate was, like, shaking his head no. And they're like, you know what? Just to be safe, because LA, lawsuits abound and everything else.
Yeah.
They threw me in the squad car.
Yeah.
Right. And then they threw me in a holding cell.
Ugh.
And now I'm sitting in a holding cell, thankfully by myself. All right. But I'm sitting there and I'm half crying because I'm like, geez, my worst fear my whole life, never been hospitalized, right, was going into the hospital because I went crazy.
Yeah.
And here I am facing this, right? Because I'm only one step away.
Yeah.
I'm in a holding cell, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no real coming back.
It's terrifying to think of going to those,
Yeah, but I'm also chuckling to myself because I'm sitting there and, they took the handcuffs off me to put me in the cell, but, they checked the cell to make sure I can't hurt myself. But there on the bar that they sometimes handcuff people to is a pair of handcuffs that they've left, which are permanently bent open because someone like got in a scuffle or something. I'm like, I could easily kill myself with that.
Oh my
right?
God.
And but I'm not suicidal.
Right.
That's the thing. They mistaken self-harm for suicidal.
Yeah.
And they conflate the two. One can lead to the other, but in my case,
Yeah.
But they don't know, so good on them for putting me in.
But also, like, when I was in jail, and this is separate from the story, in the mental ward, because I made a joke that was dumb. They thought I wanted to kill myself, which at that point I didn't. But everything, there were so many things in there I could have killed myself with. I'm like, you guys, come on. Anyway.
So it gets better. So they come back, only it's instead of the arresting officers, I wasn't arrested. I was 5150. California Penal Code, under which, I'm explaining for the people not familiar, you're detained for 72 hours in a psychiatric hold, right? Just to make sure you're not a danger to yourself or others. So this is the beginning of that process, right, where I'm intaken into the holding cell. Then the people, I don't know their official title, but essentially they're kind of like detectives that deal with mental illness stuff, right? So they come down to interview me, ask me a bunch of questions about why I'm in there, and figure out if I need to go to the hospital.
Right.
So they do their thing, and they're like, okay, we're just going to take you to the ER, but not the mental hospital, right? Just to get you checked out because you've already done some harm to yourself, but just make sure you're going to be okay.
Right.
So I'm like, so I'll be out of here? They're like, yeah, no, by tonight the latest. So I was like, oh, great. I think this is just the way they get you to keep going with the process.
Yeah, because if they start telling you it's 3 days, you're going to freak out.
Yeah, exactly. So they haven't gotten me to a safe place yet, right? So so I'm going along. I'm like, yeah, sure. So handcuffs go back go in another cruiser, go to the ER facility, right? Under my health insurance, which I won't name. And because they did a fantastic job, but it's regardless. It's just you go to the hospital. Now you're in the ER. Now I'm the crazy guy handcuffed in the ER between a couple of, detective types, and every patient in there is like, who's Charles Manson, right? Who's the guy who's going to kill us? Like, no, I'm just a danger to myself, not others. It's fine. So, they put me in a bed. They got some poor kid security guard watch me all night. And it gets to a certain point in the evening where I'm like, they're not sending me home, right?
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I'm stuck here. And in the middle of the night, they transfer me to the actual mental facility. And I'm joking with the drivers of the ambulance because, my brother was an EMT for years. And so, I'm just like, hey, another round for you guys. What's going on? Because I had watched them all night bussing people in and out of so I got to kind of recognize them. So I was joking with them. And they're taking me in. And I'm like, where am I going? Fucking Jurassic Park? Because the outside of the facility, the back door, because it's so late at night, is a giant metal cage with the magnetic security doors on either end of it. Just like they were letting a velociraptor into the thing. Right? And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is no wonder people hate going to these places. It's from the moment you get here, it's a nightmare.
They're nightmares.
So I get in there. It's like 4 in the morning, 6 in the morning, something like that. It's only like an hour or two before wake up time, go to breakfast. But I get a couple hours. I've got a roommate. It turns out he was a sleeper. He just slept the entire time. Didn't get to know him. But then it's breakfast, and I'm like, okay, how are we getting out of here?
Yeah.
All right.
That's all you can think of.
Yeah. And so I'm like, all right, just do whatever they say. You know the routine. I know everything to say to a doctor to be normal.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And I'm like, let's just get the hell out of here. Right. So everyone who's interviewing me for anything, because you meet with a nutritionist and a this and a that, and like a list of people, every one of them will like, yeah, no, and anything I can do to speed this up because it's Friday now.
Yeah.
I went in on Thursday, now it's Friday.
Yeah.
And I got a show at Flappers at 9:30 that night. And I'm like, look, I'm a minor Hollywood celebrity. I got places to be, okay? I got to be at a show
and now
at
you're
9:30.
sounding completely coherent and normal.
Yeah.
They're like, why is he in here?
Yeah. So,
I'm good at that too.
So they're like, okay, let's get you to meet with the psychologist to, get this signed off on. Get to meet them around like 10 a.m. or so, do a whole song and dance with them. I mean, I was being sincere, but in the back of my head, it's like, just get out of here.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to go on the meds because I had done Prozac at like 16, and man, did that not go well for me personally. It works for some people, not for all people, and I was one of the people it was just not great for. So I was like, yeah, I've never wanted to go on meds. She's like, look, I really highly suggest that you take these meds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, it wouldn't be Prozac. It would be Lexapro. I was like, okay, whatever. Tomato, tomato.
Yeah.
I worked in pharmaceutical marketing. I know it's an SSRI, right?
Yeah,
they all work
exactly.
generally the same way. And she's like, look, whatever. If you don't want to do it, you want to do it. So we go through a whole like half-hour thing, and I'm like, I can tell she's like 50-50 on sending me home. And I was like, look, if it gets me out of here today, I'll do the meds.
Yeah.
All right. And she's like, okay, good. All right. And I was out of there from the time I was in there to the time I was out. It was 12 hours.
Oh, okay.
Right. That day. I was out by 4 p.m. Right. Made my show at Flappers. Great. Thing was, I went on the meds. All right. Most people, they don't force you to take them while you're well, they weren't going to force me to take them while I was there, but they were like, yeah, start taking them right away.
Yeah.
Some people I know would just chuck them right in the waste bin. Right. Me, I was like, you know what? Let's just give it a shot.
Yeah.
Worst that happens, I go off them.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I started taking them and then went through some check-in procedures and stuff that you've been hospitalized.
Yeah.
Welcome back to society.
Right.
How are you adjusting? And then met with the psychologist like 3 months later. They're like, we're going to up your meds a little bit. I was like, all right. And then, but since I've been on the meds, I still get depressed. I still get anxious. But the lows aren't quite as low.
Well, because you're just medium all the time.
No. I find that it's not, like some people have that numbing thing. For me, it's not.
Yeah.
I think it's partly because I'm so keyed up all the time normally. But for me, I think it really does just prevent me from bottoming out.
Yeah.
I could still get really low, and I have been, but it just preventing me from hitting bottom. And that was the thing. Without having my roommate call the cops, without having to be thrown in handcuffs, thrown in a holding cell, thrown into the psych ward, I would have never gotten to that point where I actually accepted the help people were trying to give me.
Yeah. But so they're good. They're helping you.
Oh, yeah.
They're
great. Helping me. I got a therapist now, finally, thankfully.
That's awesome.
Which is a bitch in Hollywood trying to get a therapist.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to find a good one that actually you trust to be so vulnerable with because it is so easy to get thrown in. You're like, how much can I say without saying too much to where my agency is taken away from me, you know? That's tough.
Well, that's the thing. I stopped trying to hide stuff.
Yeah,
right?
which is that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're doing the same shit.
No, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, we've tried crazy for 36 years. Let's try a little something different,
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that the meds work. Because to your point, I've had meds before. And they don't work well for me. They actually, there's the people that it makes them worse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was on Valium for 15 years for anxiety and I got off of that. Now I don't take any prescriptions like that. But my scenario actually, I think, was made worse by meds at first, but really comes down to the same thing of asking for help, feeling like you're worthy of it because the only reason I didn't was because I was like, I don't want to bother anybody.
Oh, yeah. I hate being a burden.
I'm already such a pain in the ass with my anxiety and my depression that a lot of the time people look at as you're exaggerating, you're being dramatic, that sort of stuff. And, just going through a really tough time in my life and not having anybody there to help me and support me and not asking them either, you know? So so I ended up, and I was thinking about it because I was like, oh, I'll tell this story, which buckle up, guys, because this is going to be dark. But it's I was like, wait, when did I end up in the mental ward? Because it wasn't this time. So here's just a quick background of the time that I did go to the mental ward. I shouldn't have been in there, but it was I had this ex-boyfriend he was my boyfriend at the time, and he was a prick. And we were fighting, and I was taking Klonopin at the time or whatever. And he was driving me nuts. So I took 3 of them because I was like, you're driving me nuts. And I took 3. So to retaliate against me because I wasn't, listening to him and we were fighting, he decided to call the ambulance and say that I was trying to drug myself to kill myself. And then I couldn't convince them otherwise because I was so upset from him that I was just like, they were like, sorry, he called, we have to take you. And so in Florida, they call it Baker Act.
Okay.
They're Baker acting. So they Baker acted me because this asshole said that I was trying to kill myself, but I wasn't. Right. But to your point about the mental ward, it's like that place is so scary that like when I got in there, I was like, oh my God, I have to get out of here. Because everybody is so like medicated and fucked up and like really need a lot of help. Not to say that we don't. But it just, to me, didn't seem like a good environment to feel better or get better. You know, for me, I was just like, okay, this is somewhere you don't want to end up. And you need to get out of here and you need to get away from this boyfriend, which I did. Right. So I have this like abusive, like my mom was able to get me out of there, I think, in 24 hours. I think just because once they told her where I was, because they wouldn't at first, you know. And it was also because I didn't ingest a ton of stuff, like, and everything was fine physically for me. You know, they were like, oh, you know, you didn't, because he said that I ingested a bunch of pills, which I hadn't, you know. So anyway, so I end up like leaving this guy, and I have at the time this was about 15 years ago. So I was in college and I was about 20 years old, and my best friend at the time, she's her name's Jess also, and she's like the person I talk to all the time. I was with this dude that I didn't really have any other friends other than her because she was my roommate, because he was really jealous and was very controlling. And so I was in this shitty relationship. She was like the only person I could talk to or really reach out to. I talked to her all the time. But like she had mental issues, and she was diagnosed bipolar, and then also diagnosed borderline, and she had tried to commit suicide before, but called me and was like, help me, I made a mistake. But then she had moved back home with her mom, but our relationship was still solid. She'd come visit me, I'd visit her, right? So anyway, like I move out, I'm talking to her, we're talking about like getting a place together because she and her boyfriend might be breaking up, all this stuff, and she wants to come back up to Orlando where we went to school. And I'm like, cool. And then I just remember like her like calling me and saying like, oh, I actually might be able to work things out with him. But they had broken up, you know, for a couple weeks, but she'd hooked up with somebody else. And she called me, and this was like a big thing that really fucked with my head. She called me and asked like what she should do. Should I tell him or should I not? And just like go into the relationship. And so my advice was like, well, I think if you're starting a relationship or getting back into one with trust, like you shouldn't lie, you know? So what I would do is not lie. I would tell the truth, which ended up being a really like big mental fuck for me when she did that, and he flipped out on her and like kicked her out and all this stuff, and she killed herself.
Jesus. So
she was already struggling with a lot of stuff. And I just remember getting that phone call and thinking like it was from one of her friends down there, and I was like, I'm not down there. And they're like, well, you better come down here because she did this, you know. And because he had like a gun lying around, and she just in like an angry, hasty passion shot herself, you know. So there was no coming back from that. And I just couldn't believe it. And I remember like just hysterically like losing it, going straight to Florida. Like I was like during finals in school, and like I still was like, hey guys, I need a week later to do my finals, blah blah blah, because I'm always like overdoing it, you know, and not even taking the self-care to be like, your best friend just killed herself, maybe you don't give a shit about, you know, the art final right now. So I drove straight there, and when I get to her parents' house, they're like, go talk to him, you know, her boyfriend, because he's just like looks just like terrible, you know, because obviously he's like, I did this sort of thing,
right?
You know? And I felt the same way, because once he told me the story of why it happened, which was, well, she said this thing, and then I flipped out on her, and she was so like upset and like lost it, and like just like in just a hasty, you know, anger did that, and it worked, and she died. And I was like, oh my God, it's my fault, because if I never told her to say that, she maybe wouldn't have, and maybe she'd still be here. So like all these things of just like, oh my God, you know, like I can't believe this is happening, and I can't believe that something that I did or said even if not directly, because it's still, you know, what I've had to like work towards in therapy and stuff is like, it isn't your fault. She still did that. But it's like, but man, what a fucking thing to say that you think is not a big deal. And then have that be like the catalyst for never seeing your favorite person again, you know? So basically that happened. And then I think I actually was still like I think I was actually still with the guy at the time. And that's right. We were talking about leaving. And I remember one of the big things that made me be like, this is it, was I started pulling together all these photos of us, you know, cause that's what you do when your friend has a funeral. And he says to me like, oh, I saw the pictures and I almost cried. And I was like, fuck you, bro. So I was like, get the fuck out of here. Go move back home. I don't give a shit what you do. Just leave, you know? Yeah. And then I'm alone, you know, and I don't have my best friend. I'm finally out of this shitty relationship, but now I move into this apartment by myself, a 1-bedroom, whatever. And I'm going to school. I go do my finals after the fucking funeral, whatever. I go through my life. I'm so depressed and upset though, that like they had tried, you know, they've always told me, cause I've always dealt with depression and anxiety, to get on meds, and I never wanted to. But at this point, I was seeing a therapist because, like, I was like, I'm not doing well. Like, I don't know what to do, and I feel really just lost and at fault and all these things, you know? So I go to this therapist, and she's not the best, but she's somebody, and she's in my insurance and whatever, and she puts me on meds, on Effexor, I think it was, for depression and stuff. And I still wasn't, you know, I was still depressed. I wasn't feeling great. And I definitely didn't feel comfortable reaching out to, you know, my family or asking anybody. And other than that, I just really didn't have anybody else that I had talked to in the past couple of years that was a close enough friend that I could talk to this stuff about. Like, you know, I'm sure I could have reached out to my mom, but I just didn't, because I was like, well, that's going to be annoying. And I'm, you know, I don't want to be a bother, you know? So I was just like alone by myself in this apartment, just like thinking about all this stuff, going to therapy, sure, going to school, sure, not really knowing. And it's like my last year, maybe I was a little bit older, because I think it was coming up to one of my last years of college, but like, so maybe 22, 23, and like just hitting a bottom, you know, one day, and just feeling like there's literally nobody I can contact, and the people that I maybe would, like, I don't want to bother them. Like, fuck this. I shouldn't even be here. I don't want to be here anymore, you know? And like I've never felt that low since then, thankfully, because I think I've caught it before it gets to that point now, to where I'll like reach out to people. And I think the meds did play a part in like taking it over the edge, because it was something that it was like new chemicals, and that age is like prime for getting, for it backfiring and actually making you suicidal. So I definitely like wasn't suicidal at first, but I was depressed, and then I was definitely suicidal. And also afraid to even say that, because people start to say things like, oh, that's selfish, or oh, that's whatever. And also afraid to say it because my best friend just killed herself. And what am I going to do? Reach out to her friends and say, I want to do it too? They're going to be like, fuck you. No, we haven't even gotten over this yet. So there were so many reasons why I didn't want to bring it up to anybody. And I just, one day, like, I kind of like snapped, and logically, like, so it wasn't even like a logical thought process where I could like do it right and like actually get it done, you know? I just went under my kitchen sink and fucking put every pill that I had in there in my body, like Tylenols, old prescriptions, whatever, you know, definitely like any Valium that I had, whatever, you know, which wasn't a ton. But like I took everything that I had, and then I just waited, you know, and I was like, I'll just die here. I was just, because I didn't think about it. I was like, oh, I'll just die. I ate all this this poison. I'm sure I'll die from this, from, you know, all of this shit. And like, I remember like passing out, because I think I took like NyQuil's too. Like, I remember passing out like on the couch and waking up feeling very like sick. Like, I was like, oh my God, how am I still alive? First of all, you know, fuck, you know, I'm still alive. Shit, you know, this is terrible and embarrassing, and hopefully this will go away. But then I feel really sick, and I start throwing up, and I'm throwing up blood. And so I'm throwing up blood, you know, I can't stop. I'm like kind of crawling around because my system is like shutting down. I'm like, this is so painful. Like, I'm in pain, like physically. And so then I go and I like Google it and I'm like, how long does it take you to die from this? I'm still not asking for fucking help, right? And I'm like, this has got to work, you know, but it's so painful that I can't. And it's like, oh, it should probably take like 2 or 3 days for you to die from that. And I was like, son of a bitch, you know, like it's going to be a lot and it's going to be really painful. And I just couldn't. I was like, well, now because I didn't ask for help ahead of time, I have to ask for help after the fact because I can't sit here and die in like the worst pain, throwing up blood, like, you know, lost my shit maniac here. Yeah. So, you know, I call my mom and I'm like hysterical. I'm like, I fucked up. I did this, you know, And she's like, oh my God. And she knew that I had like a friend that wasn't like super close to me, but like I kind of knew they used to live next door to me and my ex. Yeah. And so she's like, call her or like let me call her. And I was like, it's still like no. I was like, I didn't want her to know either, you know. And my mom's not in Orlando. I'm, you know, so she's 3 hours away. She can't get there in time. And so she's like, give me your fucking number, you know. And I'm like, you know. So I give it to her and she calls her, and she came and picked me up and took me to the hospital, and was like, you know, just clearly like freaking out because I had like a bucket that I was still throwing up in, you know. And took me to the hospital, and because I was so messed up, like there was no putting me in a mental ward yet, you know, but that was definitely, they gotta stabilize you. Yeah. So I was, you know, in the hospital for I think like 3 days. My mom came up there immediately. I had to have like a nurse like watching me. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself, things like that. And like I was hooked up to so much stuff. Like it was too late to pump my stomach, I think, because I waited so long. Yeah. And it was like my system was so haywire that they were like, you maybe have done irreparable damage to your kidneys and liver. But like, if I got up, because I was hooked up to the heart monitors, like if I got up to go to the bathroom, like my heart rate would go to like 150 or some ridiculous number. Like that's how fucked up my system was from doing that. Yet I still survived, you know, long enough. I would have died eventually, but like, who can exist through that much pain? That's why your Fight Club thing, I'm like, I'm such a baby. I'm like, please take me in my sleep, you know? Like, I can't, like, hurt myself, you know, physically. So, so I ended up, luckily, you know, my mom was there, and although they wanted to put me into like a mental ward and like do the Baker Act thing again for 72 hours, because she was there, they allowed her to take me. And also just the fact that, I think because of like the timing of like the situation, and that it wasn't like that there was just a big tragedy that I dealt with, and then this is how I dealt with it. And so this is not like maybe she's going to be okay if she can get over this hump sort of thing. So they let me like leave with her and have to like manage me essentially. And you know, I did go home for a little bit and take a little bit of time off, but not a lot. I did take a little bit of time off, I think. So I ended up having to graduate a semester later, which, sure. And of course I was worried about that. I was like, well, fuck, I wanted to graduate. Well, maybe you should have tried to kill yourself. That would have been your first way to do that, you know?
Well, but, that actually gets to an interesting thing, which is, you know, our generation is so caught up on timing. Yeah. Like everything has to hit a certain deadline, right? Because if you don't do this by this time, then you're going to be late for this other thing that turns into this other thing. Yeah. And so the idea of, well, maybe I should take a semester off school. Well, then you'll graduate late. Yeah. It's like,
and then you'll have to explain that it says this date to this date. Yeah. But it's also like our generation is also working so hard with not a lot of return. Yeah. Because we don't have a lot of options. And it's just like I'm working so much, and it's like, one, for the day job, but two, for things that I like to do. But it's just because I want to get these things done and I want to do them. But it's like physically, I can't. I have to like ice my arm sometimes. So I'm like, I'm so excited about this idea. I want to do it, you know. But it's like, no, you have to fucking force yourself to take a break, because guess what? You're not going to get to do if you don't. Like if you ruin yourself or end up hurting yourself so much that you're taken out of the game, like then you're fucked. You know, you have to slow down. You have to stop. You have to ask people for help before it gets to a point, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I'll go to another story about me beating the shit out of myself, right? So this is back in San Francisco. It's right after I quit corporate America. And it's another time I just should have asked for help. I should have asked somebody, what do I do? What should I be doing?
Yeah.
But I couldn't figure it out, right? All I knew was the job that I'd been doing for over a decade was making me sick, all right? Marketing and advertising, the numbers game of it, right?
Yeah.
Pay-per-click advertising. That's what I was a genius at. And, well, it's what everybody else said. So, you go with it.
Not your words. All right.
All right. So quick wrap up on this. Anyway, so when I left corporate, I fell into a nice deep, dark depression. And it got to the point I had such bad agoraphobia and everything. I was hiding under my coffee table.
Oh, shit.
Okay. And I started beating the shit out of myself. But at some point, it wasn't enough. And one night, I broke a pot over my head. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It separated the bowl from the handle. Right. Bam.
Shit.
Like a Tom and Jerry cartoon.
Oh my God.
So I finally called my parents, and it was like, I just beat the ever-loving bejesus out of like, I don't know, I don't know what to do. And they're like, please find somebody to talk to. So I finally found a therapist.
That's great.
And that guy was like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. You got to fix me. And he's like, well, what's wrong? It's like, I can't find a job. I can't, it makes me sick just even looking at a job search.
Yeah.
He's like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, the only thing that I like doing are getting high, making coffee, and telling jokes.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, just do that for a while then.
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's not a job. He's like, you can work in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I'm sure you can
Yeah,
work.
you don't have to have it all now, Ardin. And it's not going to, the comedy thing it takes so much time.
Oh, yeah.
That, like,
well, I'm 5 years in now. Yeah. Right. And it's like, it was so obvious looking back. Like, I should have just been doing this or this or that.
Do the things that you like. Yeah.
Right. But it's like, it's so much trouble just asking anybody, like, what should I be doing? What can you help me out with a thing? Yeah. How can I get started on this?
It sounds like you have a good therapist, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because, like, I had, I saw a therapist, I went to a better one after I tried to commit suicide. The therapist I went to, worlds better than the one I was seeing already, who was just basically useless and just handed me meds and whatever. Not completely her fault, but not her fault. Yeah. But this other lady, like, sort of changed my life in that she kind of got me to a baseline where I've never went back to that level again. And I still haven't, I'm not seeing a therapist now, but there are times in my life where I'm like, I'm feeling like stressed and I'm not managing things properly. I'm not suicidal, but I need to talk to somebody, and it can't be me complaining to, like, those closest to me all the time. It needs to be like a third party. And so I have one, like, that I talk to through my divorce and everything. And it's like, those things are so important to never get back to that place. Like, 'cause now I don't take anything for anxiety, which she got me off of, because I was like, look, I'm sick of this shit. Yeah. Like, it's a Band-Aid. It's not really helping me. How do I, and, like, it was embarrassing. I had to, like, go to this place when I was having panic attacks and cry as like a 30-something woman during my divorce because I drank too much coffee and I thought I was having a heart attack, And I'm just like, but I had to walk through it, and then I learned you don't die, Like, you're not going to die from this, like, thinking you're dying, but you have to get through it. And now, like, when I even see that coming, I can manage it myself, and worst case scenario, maybe I'll smoke a little bit of weed and that helps, but at least I don't have to take that. And so I'm glad, though, that the meds are working for you and that you have a good therapist, because that shit is important. Yeah. Guys, ask for help. We're all fucked up.
Yeah.
Okay?
And if you're feeling suicidal, call the suicide hotline. Yes. They're finally putting a bill through to make it a 3-digit number, just like 911.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's smart.
So there is help out there. That's the thing we're trying to tell everybody. It's like, even if you feel like you shouldn't be asking for help, ask for help, especially if you're feeling like that, because that's just a sign that you're not thinking right.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everybody wants to help somebody.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
You walk down the street and people ask you, hey, how did I get to somewhere? And you're happy to help them.
Yeah.
All right. Because everybody wants to be the person to help somebody.
Yeah. Just realize you're not in your right mind if you're thinking like that. Yeah. You are worth it. So to yourself and other people. So give yourself the chance for sure. Yeah. Yay.
Yeah.
That was
therapeutic. Yeah.
Exactly. So is there anything else you'd like to promote before we go?
Yeah, so you can always find me online. All my all my social media handles are Ardin, ARDIN comedy, and my website is ardincomedy.com. And look for the specials coming up. One which is called Depression Beard.
All right.
And the other one is going to be a live performance, and I think I'm going to just call that one High Time Story Time. It's essentially me doing me.
All right.
So, yeah.
Nice. Well, very good. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing
Yeah.
the dark stories. You're the first person that's come to me with something like that deep, and I'm like, well, now I can tell my deep shit
Well,
too.
good. I'm glad
So,
you felt
yeah.
like you could tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
All
All
right.
right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye.